5 reviews in like 2 days? Come on, streaming services. What else you got? What is up, Netflix fans? Welcome back to my channel. The Irregulars dropped on Netflix this weekend. Today, we are going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you whether this series is worth watching or not, in my opinion. If you like these Netflix reviews and you want to support this channel, be sure to drop your thumbs up and leave your comment down below. Do you like Sherlock Holmes or Sherlock Gnomes? All right. Set in Victorian London, this series follows a gang of troubled street teens who are manipulated into solving crimes for the sinister Dr. Watson and his mysterious business partner, the elusive Sherlock Holmes. Henry Lloyd Hughes plays Sherlock. Royce Pearson plays John Watson. A very different incarnation of these characters, and I knew absolutely nothing about this concept going in. It will absolutely have its fan. It will have its fan base, and the spin on both the Sherlock Holmes lore, but really less so that, and more so what is at the forefront, and that is the idea of these exiles and urchins, as they call them, enlisted by Holmes and Watson, coming together to find information that may be inaccessible to what seems to be on the outside looking in our two heroes, but really it is about our team here of kids living on the outside looking in, barely making ends meet. They have these wounds, both physical and mental, that have spawned from their youth, and the idea of exploring these things, lots of flashbacks and subtle moments with our characters throughout this series, gives us a reason to root for these characters and to care in the first place. Now, did I get the exploration from the characters that I was looking for in the first few episodes? Not necessarily. It actually took me a while to get on board with these characters, and we'll talk about that more in just a second. But once we learn kind of who they are, what one of our characters' dreams are all about, and the idea of what they're fighting against, when that comes together, yeah, there's more fun to be had for sure. Now, I mentioned the bad dreams. Jessie, one of our characters, she's been haunted by these bad dreams that both disorient her and make her fear for the future. Jessie is the sister of B. Billy and Spike are the other two of this four, and this is our group that we have to kind of get to know and we're rooting for throughout the series. Now, there's another character that comes in eventually. His name is Leopold, from a very different kind of upbringing, a very different background. And when these two ideas clash in the show, it creates for some interesting conflict. Now, B is kind of the leader. She is fearless. She's very protective over her sister Jessie, not only because of what she's going through now, but because of what they went through as a kid with their mother. Billy is protective of B, and Spike, he's implemented to bring kind of the comedic relief to the show, and I actually really liked him. Probably my favorite character, but the inclusion of Leopold, even though he's not necessarily the character that everybody's going to gravitate towards, the idea of him coming into this group and working for Sherlock is fascinating. So then we start to uncover this mystery that goes from terrifying because of, birds. Austin, what are you talking about? There's like this flock of ravens that continues to fly through the alleys, and I will admit the CGI was very questionable and spotty. At times it didn't work all the way, but it does a good job at conveying fear, especially towards the target audience here, young adults. It's for the young adult crowd, right? If you're watching this and you're way older, or say you're even younger than that, you'll either be scared to death if you're younger, or you'll just be like, okay, we've seen this 1,000 times. And honestly, I'm a bit older than I believe what the demographic is for this show. So I was watching this and kind of rolling my eyes at times, from tropes to cliches to just elements that we've seen in shows like Stranger Things. It also mixes in Bridgerton because of the music that plays in the background of some of the scenes, and it is pure fantasy. So anybody that's trying to sit back and tell you, well, it's supposed to be absolutely historical and accurate, that's not what the filmmakers are going for, right? If you're watching this for historical accuracy, then you may not love it, but I don't believe it was intended to be that. I think it's intended to be pure fantasy, and from there, we start encountering more supernatural aspects. Not that the flock of ravens is not supernatural, but when we start to realize what this actually is, kind of reminded me of something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it also has this CW feel to it that also may not hit at times. It brings about some of the cheesy elements of what we get from relationships and character arcs in shows that pull from tropes, pull tropes that, frankly, I'm sick of at this point, but that's kind of on me because I've seen so many of these shows, and that's all I do is review Netflix series. So if you haven't seen a lot of them, it's not going to bother you as much. And everybody's going to be different watching this. You've seen 3 or 4 just like it, or you've never seen a show like it. And if you've never seen a show like this, you're probably going to really enjoy yourself. Also, if you're a horror fan, not only the Ravens, but there is one character in particular that is stealing people's teeth. It's pretty terrifying. And we get some visuals here, again, spotty CGI, but they work extremely well in conveying the message of fear towards these younger kids, which is really scary. This series also deals with grief in a way that is, it almost becomes the focal point by the end, with multiple characters, but one in particular. I won't spoil who that is. Now, it may be a bit familiar because of other movies and series that we have gotten recently, so it's not going to land all that well for some. I think it does a decent enough job. It also does a good job of bringing our team together and at least making the mysteries intriguing enough, at least enough for me to say, I had a reasonable time with this series. I had a good time with the characters. I enjoyed some of the mystery of it all. My main issue, and what I'm going to leave you with, is I don't know if it's really nailing that target young adult audience as well as it could, because it doesn't quite nail the balance of humor and more serious elements and horror. And if you look at these things individually, there were some funny moments, some quirky moments that work well. I like some of the relationships. The horror within the visuals works really well on screen. But then you start to peel back the layers and you say to yourself, these things are so familiar. And it's also a very general style show that really doesn't do anything spectacular. And for those Holmes and Watson fans, it's not focusing on those characters near enough for you to get a lot out of it. So I don't know how many people are actually going to end up loving this show. I think it does enough to set up for really good things in the future, a nice establishment season. Okay, now we know what the world is, now we know who the characters are, our core group. But does it ever go beyond that? For me personally, it does not, even though it does everything okay enough, and sometimes that's good enough. Here's what I need from you guys. Do you believe this is something like a Sherlock meets Stranger Things? Did you enjoy your time in this world? Was it a bit too familiar for you? Leave all of those things in the comments down below. And again, if you like this review, let me know down below. While it never quite nails one element, there is plenty here to enjoy that sets up well for future seasons. I'm going to go a 60% for the Irregulars. I had a reasonable enough time binging this. It may not be the most binge-worthy show, but I think if you spread it out a little bit, get to know the world, I think it's going to find its audience for sure. I'm interested to see where they go from here. But again, it all comes down to your all's thoughts. I appreciate you big time for watching this. Let me know, what did you think about the Irregulars, and what are you watching on Netflix this weekend? You guys are the best.